next steps, we're gonna be doing some more painting. Who would have thought? So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be adding in a black tone to fill in all of these fine little details here and all of these little details here, right? So if you look at it from far away, I don't know if you could see, it's just white and it's just white lines. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a little trick, liquid shoe polish. So don't know if you know this, but the tops actually come off, and now you can stick a paintbrush in there and use it as a paint. And just for dramatic effect, we're gonna start over here and we're gonna add that in. And after we do that, before it's dry, pick it up and then rub it back off. And you just kind of keep working it. You get all these cool little details. Right. It already looks 300 years old. Isn't that cool? Okay. So we did that here, and then we're gonna do it to our compass as well, okay? So, do it to the compass. I'm a little bit more sparing on it. Okay, just with the left hand, same thing. Just kind of work it around. Okay. Sometimes I'll use just a paper towel. And you can see the difference between the two, right? That looks probably 100 times better than that one. This one just looks like a toy. This is starting to look like a real thing. And then we'll just go all the way around everything and just, when we're ready, we'll come back. All right, so now that we're done with this stage, you can see all these little cracks now. They all have a little bit of black inside of them, and it just kind of makes it a little bit more dimensional. It makes it look more like a real thing. So now that we're done with this color, I don't know if you've ever weathered anything, but I always find that weathering stuff in a couple of different colors just makes things look better. And what we're going for here is something really old, right? And when things get old, they don't just happen all at once. They happen over time. Things kind of build on themselves, and that's how things become more interesting looking. So we're done with the black. We're gonna go over here to our paint station, and look, we have brown. So we're gonna do the same thing with brown. A little bit of brown. And this one we can kind of be really economical with and not use too much. You can see the difference between the two, right? So one has a little bit more of a brown tone now, and this guy is a little bit too clean. We're gonna do the same thing here. Okay, and not too much. Put some on, and then kind of go back and rub it off again. So I don't know what the actual film prop is made from. I know that a lot of people have speculated that it's just laser printed, and from everything that I know about real pirates, I don't think they had laser printers. So what I decided to do was make everything with raised details. That way I can paint it by hand and make it look a little bit more real. So we could see here that this looks not like painted plastic anymore, right? And you remember when we made this with a little bit of brass underneath all of this paint. So now that we've done the white painting, we've done the black, we've done the brown, it looks really old, we're gonna scrape. So now that it's had time to dry, we're gonna go in, we're just gonna use the end of our scalpel here, and we're gonna scrape away some of this paint, okay? Okay, and now you can see that there's two different colors going on here. And it starts to look a little bit more real, okay? So I'll go all the way around this and I'll get rid of the white. And then you don't have to watch me scrape this for the next 20 minutes. Now we have this thing totally scraped. It's already been painted, okay? We're gonna go in and add a little bit of details with color. The nice thing that we have going for us right now is that we did a lot of pre-shading, right? So we went in with our black shoe polish, and we got it into all the little crevices, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in with two lighter colors. We're gonna go in with a little bit of red, and then with a little bit of blue, and we're gonna use our detail brush. This is the smallest thing that I have. And we're gonna add in our red all the way around here. We're gonna add in our red on the floor. And then for the blue, we're gonna go in and paint these in too, okay? And that'll be the painting of the rose. So for my paints, I like this stuff from Angelus, and these technically are made for leather. But what's really cool about these paints is that they're pre-mixed, they're pretty thin, they're thinner than most acrylics, and what's also really nice about them is that they're water soluble. So if you wanted to clean this stuff off, you could do that too, assuming you mess up. So now we have our ring done, and you can kind of see the difference. So like this part here, this is all fresh paint that I put down, and this is where we started, and you can see because of the pre-shading, it already looks like it's a little bit more old. And if I add more black on top of it, I think it adds a little bit too much. So I do my shading beforehand, add color over it, and it kind of tones it down a little bit as far as and that's the red. After this dries, we're gonna go in, we're gonna scrape all this stuff around here and just go back to white. And then this part that I left white, we're gonna scrape that down a little bit more and get back down to brass. Okay, so the next part we're gonna do while this stuff is drying, we're gonna go in and paint in the blue. So now that this thing has had a little bit of time to dry, now we can do all the scraping along the sides and come up with all of our details, right? So do the same thing that we did before, and we'll just kind of lightly go against here. And you can see that only the red is going to come off. And we get all of our numbers back. We're going to use an 18 karat gold leafing pen from Krylon. And I always kind of go down here. I'll juice it up and then go along the edge. Alright, so now we have all of our pieces totally painted up. Everything's finished with that. Now the next thing that we need to do is add the rest of our hardware. So what we're gonna do, Jack always wears this thing on his belt, so we need a way to attach it. The way that they have it attached is he has a little ring that he has on the back right over here. And what I like to do is get these little drawer pulls and attach them that way. This is probably the closest thing that I've found that's solid brass, that's off the shelf, that basically looks exactly like what you see in the film. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna drill holes back here, and we're gonna do it to this one too. And we're gonna get these guys, put them in there, and then from the inside, put a little bit of super glue to keep them in place. Okay. All right. Time. Cool. All right. Now we've got these things in, we're gonna go inside over here with a little bit of super glue and a little bit of activator and just kind of set them forever. So we're gonna make sure that this thing is nice and lined up first. Looks straight to me. Okay, got all of our super glue in there. A little bit of activator. And it's set. And that's not going anywhere anymore. Now that we have our ring set, we actually need to put clasps on this in order to keep these boxes closed. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into our compass bits box and we're gonna get these little guys. So this is what's gonna keep our box closed. And I know what you're thinking, it needs a bottom too, right? Well, we have those. Comes in a kit. But Jack's Compass doesn't use these. So we just have a collection of them. For the bottom of it, we're gonna make that after we get these installed. Okay, so we'll put those aside. And the other thing that we need out of this bits box, we need these little nails. So pirate compasses would be put together with nails. Pretty sure they didn't have Phillips head screwdrivers back then. So we're gonna put some nails down. These little guys. Okay. When we're installing these, they go on the front over here, right? And the way that I like to kind of center them up is sort of eyeball them, but I use something that's a definite measure. So this is 1/4 of an inch wide, and I kind of just compare the two sides and move it along until I get something that's just about centered. I'd say that's pretty good. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go in, drill our first hole, and we're gonna put in our first nail. So that'll give me a good starting place right there. You can see a nice little indent there. Then I'll go and drill my hole. That, take my nail, then there, okay, and I'll usually go against the end of my table and just kind of push that in. Okay, so that'll get that in pretty far. If I need to with a screwdriver, just push it down just a little bit more. Okay, so now I've got that, I can drill my other hole. now we've got both holes drilled. Go in, put a little nail there, make sure that's down, go against the table, kind of push that through, okay, and screwdriver, push it down. And what I also like to do with a Phillips head screwdriver, it's got these little pockets in it. I go in from this side, put that in there, and I kind of bend the nail in like this. Same thing here, I bend the nail in over here. And then I'll go in with my snips, chop that, okay. And after we install the second one, I'm going to go in with the rotary tool again and kind of shave these down so they don't protrude as much. Okay, so we'll do the other one right now. Okay, so for the pin, we're going to use a little bit of brass bar stock. Okay, and this is 1/8 inch brass bar stock, and we're going to put it into our little lathe. Okay. Just a little bit sticking out. And what we're going to do is, let's switch places over here. So we're going to use a file, and we're going to kind of round over the end of this thing, okay? And while we could do it with lathe bits and all of that, that's way more effort than we really need to put into this little piece. So we're going to turn on our lathe, start going, and we're going to work in this direction here. Now that's round. Okay. Now all we need to do is cut it off and make one more. Now we've got these pieces all cut and the fronts are nice and round. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go in with a 1/8 inch drill bit, same size as this. We're gonna go through this into here, and then we'll insert that and back it up with a little bit of super glue so it doesn't come out. Okay, so, okay, and I always go kind of light, and I start it and I make sure that it's centered. See, so I'm off just the slightest little bit. So I'll go here and I'll grab my ice pick, go just a little bit over. Okay, so that gives me a good starting point. And then same thing, I'll go in here, and now my bit actually will register where I want it to. And with these I go kind of slow, and I make sure that I'm lined up this way, and I'm also lined up this way, because I don't want it to be like this, I don't want it to be like that, I want it to be as square as it can be, right? So I'll go look from the top, look from the side, periodically checking, am I still square? All the way through. Okay, so now I got that hole there, and come back around this way. And this should fit into here, like that. And this should line up, like that. Now we have a box that won't open on its own anymore. And we'll also do it to this guy too. Now that we have all of our hardware on, we're gonna kind of do something about the bottoms of these boxes, right? So in order to cover all of this up, we're gonna add a little bit of leather to the bottoms. And to do that, we're gonna use contact cement, okay? So the trick to contact cement is you're gonna put a layer onto one side, a layer onto another side, and you're gonna let it set for about 5 minutes until it's just barely tacky. You'll be able to touch it with your fingers, and you won't get anything on your fingers. And at that point, you'll be able to stick the two parts together. It's also the same stuff that they put our shoes together with. So rubber doesn't come off the bottom of our shoes, so we're hoping that the leather won't come off the bottom of our compasses. Now it's been about 5 minutes and the stuff is no longer wet, and if you come in over here you can actually see that if you touch it, it's a little bit tacky, but it doesn't come off on your gloves, right? That's how we know it's ready. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna clasp that down, make sure it's closed, we're gonna hold that out of the way, and then we're just gonna put our compass into place like that and give it a good press. And then that'll just stick to the bottom, right? Okay, so we'll do that with this one. We'll also do it with this one here. Cool. Make sure that's pressed in place. Okay, then we'll get our scalpel. And then from each side, just kind of ride the edge of our compass. Now the bottom of our compass is covered in leather. The other piece that we're going to glue in is over here. We have to put in these little leather pieces around our star field. Remember earlier when I was talking about how little bubbles on the inside of here don't matter? This is why they don't matter. Okay, these guys I actually cut on my Cry-Cut machine, and they're cut to the exact size of the inside of the lid. Okay. And what's really cool about leather is that it does leave these little wisps behind, and if I'm being honest, I could take them off. I choose not to because I just think it looks a little bit more period and correct. Before I put them in though, this is the same leather that we put in on the bottom, right? So our other side over here is just kind of, it's the suede side, and then this side over here is the shiny side, the side that's finished. Before I put them in, I do get a little bit of sandpaper, smallest little piece, and I go over them a little bit, and I kind of bring the black away. And I don't do too much, but I don't want it to look like brand new leather, okay? And the reason that I can do this is because originally this was brown leather that I spray painted with flat black paint. So you could see the difference between one and the other. This one looks a little bit older. So flip them over, and this is just regular wood glue. I don't use anything fancy here. But what I do like, this is a nice little tip. It didn't come in this bottle. I get these little bottles. They're made for picnics and, I don't know, mustard, ketchup, mayonnaise, all that kind of stuff. And what I like about them is that they have the fine little tip on there. So when I'm using them, I can control my glue a lot better. Okay, so go in over here and just put a bead all the way around. I don't do too much glue. Always cap your glue. Then with a spreader, just kind of go in Just spread it out. Okay, so I got that spread. Then with a pair of tweezers, I'm gonna go in, grab that. Okay, and I'm only touching this with the back of the tweezers because I find that sometimes if you use your fingers and you push down a little bit too hard, you get a lot of squeeze out. So if you just touch it in random little places, it'll make sure you get plenty of contact and that'll never fall out. The next parts that we're going to do is we're going to work on our roses over here, and we're going to work on the mechanism to have them be spinny roses. But while we're doing that, we can actually work on this for a quick second because this will kind of have to bake. Right, so what I do over here is I use something called brass black, and you can see that this is more of like a tarnished brass, and for pirate compasses this looks way too new. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of this liquid, we're going to pour it in a cup. Don't need too much of it. Close that up. And we're going to take our brush and we're going to brush this on. Okay? And you can see pretty quickly it starts to tarnish. Get it from the underside as well. Okay. So in our compass box, we've got a couple of roses that have been finished. Got a couple of these little mechanisms here that I make. These are 3D printed. And we also have magnets. And so we'll need a couple of these. These are very, very thin neodymium magnets. And to put this together, take a drop of super glue over there, another drop over here. Okay. Take our magnet and drop that in place. Other magnet, drop that in place. A little bit of activator. Okay. Okay, so now those are set. Now we can move on to the other side. Take our Sharpie and we can find our magnet. Our magnet's over here. All right. Find our magnet. Magnet's over here. Then we do a little bit of super glue over here. And we're going to take our rose, kind of drop that in place over that. Okay. And I let that sit upside down. Do the same thing here. That over our spot. Make sure it's lined up. and I'm gonna let that sit. Okay, and the reason why I'm not spraying this with activator is because if you've ever used activator on a painted surface, you'd know that this stuff chews through paint. So we want to make sure to just kind of let the super glue do its thing, set on its own, and then we can get to installing them. Now that we have these guys sitting for a while, now they're fully attached, and we have our rose mechanism. Okay, so what we're going to do is eventually this rose is going to be sitting inside the compass here, right? And the thing that I'm not super happy with is the white paint on the inside showing. So what I end up doing is I'll take some black from Angelus's well, and I just paint the inside of this well black in here. So I just kind of go all the way around. Okay. Now that we have these things painted black on the inside, what we're going to do is we're going to take these little micro bearings, okay, and we're going to install them right there. Okay, so just because of how thin they are, I usually back them up with a washer to just kind of make them sit off of the bottom. Okay, so that drops in there, that goes in there, and with something with a flat bottom, I'll take that and kind of push it down, make sure it's sitting nice and flat. Okay. After you've got that, all you need to do is take that peg, drop it in there, and now I've got a compass that will spin around. A magnet from underneath, you can see, will actually make the rose move all over the place. And if you remember, there's nothing along the bottom. So another thing that we're going to do is we're going to prep our dial to put over our rose to kind of keep everything in place. We're going to do that with a little bit more brass black, just as before, and because these are cast with brass powder in them, we'll have very much of the same reaction. So this will start to turn blue, and then after a while it'll start to tarnish into something a lot darker. Okay, so when you're doing this with cast pieces, it takes more time because the acid actually has to get through all of the polyurethane in order to give it that effect, but you can see it's already starting to turn a different color and get darker. And now these two have been tarnished. So we're going to take the same little bit of steel wool that we used earlier to kind of buff these up a little bit and take off some of this black tarnish and kind of make them a little bit more shiny. So what we're going to do, this is the same steel wool that we used before on the back of our compass to kind of blend in our paint and make the paint look more like the actual plastic that it's made out of. We're going to use that. It's it's 4-0 steel wool, and we're just kind of going to go over this lightly, and we're going to try to take away some of this tarnish. You can see it's got a little bit of a sheen to it now. And we're going to go over both of these, and then we're going to get to installing them. Now that we've got these finished and ready to go, we're going to take our two compasses and we're going to get to installing those. And the way that we install them is we'll take a little bit of glue kind of off to the side, very, very small amount, and with our scalpel tool, get that, and we'll just put a small little bead over here. Very, very little bit. One over here. And one over here. And with the highest of precision, drop that in place. There and there. And then we can actually just wiggle this around a little bit until all of these forks line up. There. And we'll let that sit on its own with the glue set up, and that'll be ready to go. The next step that we're gonna do is we're gonna add all of the famous chipping along the top edge of Jack's compass. Okay, and what we're gonna do first, before we do that, is we're gonna map it out. And I've sort of done a lot of these, so I kind of know where they all are, but I've got one over here, got another teeny one that goes over here, another one goes over here, one here, and one this way. Okay, with these two little tools, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, and with this one here, you see it's like really sharp right around the corner, and I'm going to go in over here and just kind of set up my corners here and here, and then after that I'll come in with this one and I'll kind of take off this edge here. So what we're trying to do, rather than scraping paint away, I kind of want to make it look like the inlay is real inlay. So I'll take off just a small little layer from the top of it, and that way it'll be set below the inlay, and it'll kind of give the illusion that the part that is left behind is the box itself, and then the inlay is just sitting proud of that. Okay, so I'll show you what it looks like right now. So I don't know if you were able to tell that when we were going through this, now all of this inlay sits just a little bit proud of here, right? So this hopefully gives kind of the illusion that the box steps down and sort of continues. Okay, so that's kind of a way that we fake it. Now we've got all of our chipping in, our hardware is on, the roses are in, we've got this leather glued in, we've got all our painting done, the box is closed, it's a whole thing. We need to figure out a way to keep it to our belts, right? So in order to do that, we're gonna add on some leather lacing. So I usually buy this leather lace, is the same stuff that you use to lace up baseball gloves. I just get it on Amazon. 2 strings of this cost like 15 bucks. Shout out to Kobe Sports, you know, if you know, you know. So we're gonna open that up, and we're gonna get our lace out. Right? And the other thing about these laces is they're a little bit too new. So I'll take a piece of 120 sandpaper, put that in there, and just kind of run that down. And what that's gonna do is it'll sort of make it softer, and it doesn't really look as nice anymore. This is still a little bit too tough to use, so what I'll do after that is I get a little bit of furniture wax, and this is just citrus wax that you use for like wood furniture, and I get a little bit of it, and I'll just kind of roll it up in here. And what this does is this wax, it's got citrus oil in it, and it ends up making the leather a lot softer and more pliable. Okay, so instantly you can see that waxed oiled leather looks way more piratey, And then just to get all the excess wax off, get it on there. Okay. Take off the gloves. Okay, and the other thing, just so you guys know, you remember that we glued these in? Okay, so don't pull by the box. Stick your finger in there, okay, and pull that way. Okay, now we have a nice tight knot. So now those are ready to be tied to our belts. And believe it or not, we have one last step. There's one more step. We got to do something about that, right? So what we're gonna do is go in with just a little bit of black paint. We're gonna paint up that edge. We'll go in with a little bit of paint. Now we're just gonna sit around and watch paint dry.